So welcome back. Today we're going to talk about identity. There are a few aspects of identity that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about ideology, we'll talk about political culture, we'll talk about political attitudes. So we're going to start off today with an example, with the understanding that you can't really understand politics without understanding the peoples of a particular country. And this is especially relevant to those who study political culture. So here you've got a picture on the front page of The Economist from several years ago, when we really had the beginning of the rise of China. China's been on the rise for a long time, but around the mid-2000s, people said, hey, this thing is going to get really big. So what do we make of China's rise? Well, China is clearly a rising power, but it's unclear necessarily how to understand this. Some argue that you need a culture-based perspective, which puts a different light on China's rise. President Hu Jintao, former president now, on foreign trips, often talked of China's rise in very cultured nuance. Quote, "We aim to build a harmonious society at home and work with other countries to build a harmonious world of enduring peace and common prosperity." Another quote, "We believe in cooperation and harmony among nations, and we hold that the strong and the rich should not bully the weak and the poor." So notice this focus again on harmony, on cooperation. Premier Wen, another quote from 2007, again when this Economist article was written. "As China's development has shown and will continue to show, a prosperous, democratic, harmonious, civilized, and modern China will make an even greater contribution to maintaining world peace and promoting human progress." So a cultural lens can shed a lot more light on the meaning of this. Why the stress on harmony? Is it just a function of common pleasant talk unassociated with reality? Is it true to Chinese philosophy and practice? People who know China very well, scholars who've studied China and the Chinese culture, might be able to put this into a different perspective. Now, just to let you know that not all countries rise in the same way, using the same sort of talk of harmony, we can contrast this with Hitler in the 1930s. Hitler came to power talking of German humiliation, of internal conflict against the Jews, of sources of external conflict, France, Czechoslovakia, where this German diaspora lay. In a 1938 speech in Berlin, very characteristic of Hitler, "Above us all stands the motto, no one in the world will help us if we do not help ourselves." I'm trying to kind of yell because that's the way he talked. "This program of self-help is a proud and manly program. It is a different program from that of my predecessors, who ran around through the world, going a-begging, now in Versailles, then in Geneva. It is a prouder thing that today we Germans are determined to solve our own problems and to help ourselves." Now, clearly a very different tone than what you have from China today. A November 1938 speech. "Every promise which had been made to Germany in the 14 points," it's referring to World War I, "was afterwards broken. Germany was faced with final collapse. The German Reich and people both seemed lost. And then came the German resurrection." Okay, and then he talks about this change of faith, and all the German parties used to believe that all the power lay outside of their people, and now they've realized that their own people can do it themselves. And then, quote, "God helps only those who are prepared and determined to help themselves." So a much more ominous, much more taking power into our own hands, no concern about the international community. So I think this helps to sort of highlight the difference in maybe cultural understandings of the rise of power. So again, what I'm trying to highlight here is how political culture can play an important role. Let me give you one more example. Here we've got corruption. Corruption is bad, it's wasteful, it's inefficient, it's a drag on the economy, it's morally dangerous. But in some cultures, it is useful. In some cultures, the culture of corruption has been ingrained. It is a long-standing common practice. So, for example, you can't really understand Uzbek politics without it. Why do things get done? Why do they not get done? It's about corruption. Everything from getting a telephone line to selling goods in the market or crossing the border, you have to pay a little on the side. And what this means is that culture has become ingrained in the political and economic culture. Corruption is accepted, and it's talked about just like we pay our taxes. People don't like to pay corruption. They complain about it just the way we complain about paying our taxes. But they know that by paying, they can continue to have some degree of security. Okay? So they have a very good understanding of who to pay and how much to pay at what times. It's their own form of social contract. So again, today we're going to talk about society, and especially ethnicity and nationalism, and other forms of identity, including ideological identifications. Okay, these are all lenses that we can use to understand the world. So let's start with society. Society can be defined as a people, but it's much more. It's shared institutions that define behavior, what is acceptable, how to approach things. So here you've got a definition: a community, nation, or broad grouping of people having common traditions, institutions, and collective activities and interests. Much of this is ingrained in culture, and it can lead to conflict and misunderstanding in divided societies, in heterogeneous societies. To give you one example, classic case in South Africa, where European Afrikaners, European descendants, Afrikaners, who are sort of Dutch-like language-speaking people, so Europeans who've been there for hundreds of years, have this tradition that you have to look into someone's eyes if you're telling the truth. Same thing common in the West. Now, in the Zulu tradition, you avoid looking into the eyes of authority figures. And so the result is that here's the gardener who's accused of stealing something. He denies it, though, but he won't look into the white accuser's eyes, and therefore he's assumed to be guilty, and he's fired. Okay, this is more characteristic under the apartheid period. Okay. So we see culture, and we see the rise of culture and various aspects, various focuses on culture, even throughout the government. The U.S. military in 2012 published an 18-page pamphlet officially titled Cultural Understanding, A Guide to Understanding Coalition Cultures. Okay, and it was introduced just in 2012 by the Afghan Defense Ministry. And it tries to explain our troops to them, since our troops weren't getting what was inappropriate and what wasn't. So here are some excerpts. Quote, when coalition members get excited, they may show their excitement by patting one another on the back or the behind, it explains. They may even do this to you if they are proud of the job you've done. Once again, they don't mean to offend you. In other words, if they touch your butt, don't be offended by it. Another one, when someone feels comfortable in your presence, they may even put their feet on their own desk while speaking to you. They are by no means trying to offend you. They simply don't know or have forgotten the Afghan custom. Okay, because pointing the soles of one's shoes at someone is considered a grievous insult in Afghanistan. So again, culture is very important. Now, political culture we can define as the political psychology of a country or nation. It is deep-seated, long-held values characteristic of a society or a group. This is not about short-term attitudes, not about trends, not about the latest polling figures. It's about much deeper understandings in society. Okay, so going back to the corruption example I was giving you, this isn't what do you think about corruption today and how does that change next year? It's how do you think about corruption? How does society think about corruption more generally over the long term? Okay, is it just that this year there's been a rise in corruption and now people are happy or unhappy with it, or is this a long-standing value? People attach value to this idea of corruption. It's a social institution. It gets things done. So political culture can help us explain why some countries are more prone towards one or another political option. In other words, democracy or various types of non-democracy, which we'll talk about in the next couple of weeks. Basic norms for political activity in society. Now the problem is that culture is very slippery. It's a guide to what's acceptable. It's a broad guideline for when and how to behave. Now, important elements include traditional cultures. By traditional cultures, we mean those that emphasize religion, family, nation, as opposed to secular, rational cultures. By secular, rational cultures, we mean those that are less deferential to authority, much more individualistic. Okay? And these are closely related to survival versus self-expression cultures. Survival cultures are those focused on group conformity in the name of economic and physical security, as opposed to self-expression cultures, which are much more focused on the diversity of people and diversity of behavior. So you might understand survival cultures to be more applicable or more pertinent or more necessary, where you've got people who are living in agricultural areas, in more subsistent conditions, where people have to help each other. The collective is much more important, versus in more modern, modernized and industrialized and urbanized places, where it's not so much about the collective helping out, it's about you fending for yourself, where you've had this self-expression culture. So certain political cultures may be more prone to liberalism, maybe more prone to communism or fascism. Perhaps there's even a cultural prerequisite for democracy. The question then is, how salient is political culture? And we're going to stop there and break this up.